Good morning. My name is Seafood Dave Charles from KAJUKENBO Napoli in Naples, Italy. I wanted to take a moment to talk about something that comes up in class every now and then, and more so in comments on social media when showing a technique such as a punch counter or a grab art defense. Okay, an attacker is not going to stand there and let you execute 15 techniques on him and leave his arm extended after hitting you so you can execute your technique. In martial arts, we learn our techniques by executing fixed sets of defenses for various attacks that might be common in the street. Now, this can be done statically, meaning that no resistance, or after the technique is learned, can be practiced with resistance, adding more of a realistic experience. For example, in punch counter number 1, but what if your attacker throws another punch in the middle of your technique? Well, then you modify your technique accordingly, as shown here in punch counter 1B. As you can see, the difference between punch counter 1A and 1B, the hammer fist changes from an attack to a block followed by another attack. While this may not be apparent, it should be stressed to the student that when things do not go as planned, you don't get a do-over, and we need to react accordingly with another technique, because every technique will not work 100% of the time with 100% of the attackers. Now, it's important that we mention that these techniques are not meant to be executed necessarily verbatim in the event of an attack, as if we simply choose from our catalog of techniques based off the attacker's actions when we're attacked in real life. You'll likely use something that's part of a technique before you realize what it is that you're doing, and then part of the techniques as you continue to deal with the threat until it is neutralized. Now, the reality is that what happens is much faster than your brain will be able to process. 1, what's happening; 2, understand what's happening; 3, formulate your response; and then 4, execute that response. It's one of the reasons why law enforcement and military are taught the controversial 21-foot rule or 7-meter rule, which states that on average, an attacker at 21 feet will be able to close that distance and stab you before you can pull your weapon and shoot him or her. And the reality is 21 feet or 7 meters is actually a bit short based on scientific studies and should not be used as a fixed safe distance. Okay. If you do a simple Google search, it'll tell you that the average reaction time for a human being is about 200 to 300 milliseconds. Okay, but in reality, that'd be gross motor skills at best. And the reality, I'd venture to say, is probably more like 1 second, 1.2 seconds, give or take. That's what we used to teach in motorcycle safety classes before you recognize and are able to respond to a threat. In a nutshell, action is almost always faster than reaction. Okay, a person will not have the time to register or understand which hand or foot is attacking and what foot is forward, etc., before choosing an action. Okay, it'll have to be a reflex action that comes from training over and over and over again 1,000 times. You might not even be able to block the initial attack and have to eat it. Okay, but if you do catch his arm, then what? What if you do manage to block the attack, the punch or the kick, and then what? Again, no time to think. It's about building unconscious memory, or as we called it in the military, muscle memory. You simply do it without thinking because you've conditioned your body to do so. Your body's been there 1,000 times. It just knows and does what it's supposed to do. Additionally, in KAJUKENBO, we introduce some principles into our punch counters that sometimes get missed and should be stressed to our students so that they understand what and why of what they're doing. And the techniques in order in which they are performed. Okay. For example, we'll almost always follow a line of attack, so to speak, of 1, blocking the attack; 2, controlling the attack or the attacker; 3, doing a counterattack; 4, taking the attacker down; 5, finishing the attacker; and then 6, cover and look for further threats. Okay. In addition, we combine the use of angles and always keep in mind our distances or our ranges to our opponent and how to use them to our advantage in executing our techniques, whether we're blocking, controlling, or attacking. 3 main ranges okay, that I like to teach are the outside range, okay, which means we're basically outside the critical distance where we cannot be attacked, but we also cannot attack. Okay. 2, we're at critical distance. Okay. In other words, we can be attacked or we can attack. Okay. 3 is the inside distance. Okay. We're in close range to the attacker with limited striking and or blocking capability, or what I like to call elbow and knee territory. Okay. I would note that the safest of those zones is probably the outside, obviously, but the next safest would be the inside. Okay, you're right next to your opponent, but if he does hit you, he can't hit you with any amount of power. All right, so we try to learn those things and use those things to our advantages. Okay, but while not necessarily spoken, these principles are baked into the techniques that we use to imprint muscle memory and learn the various blocking, striking, takedown, and ground fighting techniques. All of these things together help us to accomplish the goal of stopping the threat and ending the attacker's ability to continue the attack as quickly as possible. Now, another thing I want to take a moment to address is sports training versus self-defense mindset. Now, this is a sensitive topic for some and just common sense for others. When you train for sport, your training goals are much different than in a self-defense situation. And as such, the techniques that you use will inherently be different in a sports setting than in a combat life or death situation. In a sports setting, you're attempting to position yourself to score the next point, okay, without getting hit or scored upon first by your opponent. In self-defense, it's all about survival and minimizing your opponent's ability to do damage or harm to you or your family while maintaining your ability to neutralize the threat. KAJUKENBO is not a sport martial art. Its intended purpose is to be an effective, no-nonsense, street-smart self-defense style that was made to counter a trained fighter, let alone an untrained thug, bully, or common criminal. With that said, there has been a lot of marketing in the martial arts that purports to sell you a brand of combat martial arts or combat sports, and some have even tried to convince you that mixed martial arts is the most complete and the only answer to meet your self-defense goals. Well, I'm here to tell you that's just not true. What is mixed martial arts? Okay. Well, today that means something different than what it might have meant 50 years ago. Okay, because of the UFC. KAJUKENBO is a mixed martial art in that it's made up of 6 primary martial arts that make up its name, which is an acronym that represents each style. The KA stands for karate, the JU stands for judo and jiu-jitsu, the KEN stands for Kenpo, the BO stands for boxing, both Western and Chinese boxing or Kung Fu. Additionally, there's many elements of Filipino martial arts incorporated in the techniques that we practice. Well, while by definition, KAJUKENBO is a mixed martial art, today's definition has been distorted and for the most part refers to the mixed martial arts of the UFC and the like. While MMA in this sense is obviously very effective in a combat sports arena, I'd not go as far to say that that makes MMA training the smartest choice for self-defense, although it does make a pretty convincing argument. MMA is not a complete martial art and usually consists of several coaches from differing martial arts participating in coaching the fighter to meet the different skill sets that are desired, as well as conforming to the confines of the unified regulations of the UFC. So since KAJUKENBO is a mixed martial art, or MMA, is KAJUKENBO effective in a combat sports environment? Well, I'd say KAJUKENBO is very effective in any sporting environment and is a solid base and a very complete mix of martial arts, but would likely need some augmentation in the grappling department. Okay, there have been several KAJUKENBO practitioners that have been very successful in the UFC, such as the Iceman Chuck Liddell, Glover Teixeira, Alex Pereira, and Sage Northcutt, to name a few, and there's many others. Now, what's that mean? While KAJUKENBO is not designed for the UFC or other various combat sports arenas, its principles and its styles of fighting are very effective in the sports environment. Now, when I say the UFC is the ultimate pressure test for effectiveness of martial arts, well, yes and no. The yes, in my opinion, is a limited measure and might be a good indication of how you stack up against other trained fighters one-on-one in a limited sense, as you'll not be facing multiple attackers, sticks, knives, baseball bats, or guns in the cage. In real life, there is no referee to say enough is enough unless you happen to get attacked in front of a police station or a donut shop. You'll just have to hold your own until the average response time in your area passes, assuming, of course, that anyone who sees what's going down bothered to call the police before their phone is used to record the attack. Although there'll be plenty of video available, I wouldn't expect any bystander intervention. Lastly, one of the largest differences and maybe hindrances between sports martial arts and real combat is target selection. To put it simple, vital areas are off limits in any and all sports styles of martial arts. In self-defense, vital areas is where you want to strike. So in training, a sports fighter will avoid striking these areas and will actually develop muscle memory to not strike them. In KAJUKENBO, we focus on vital areas because that's what inflicts the most damage on our attackers and ends the attack quickly. I know that some of you may disagree and may have some different opinions, and I welcome your feedback and your comments, so let me know your thoughts. In any case, I thank you for watching, leaving a comment, and subscribing to my channel. And I'd like to say have a nice rest of your day. Mahalo.